Okay. Hello, students. Once again, you're welcome to Waidsum University, and this is Information Privacy Engineering and Privacy by Design, and this is Chapter 8 of this course. So, without much ado, let's begin. Okay, this is Chapter 8, as we have stated, rightly stated. This is Chapter 8, and the topic for today is online privacy. Quickly, let's start because we do not have much time. Now, first of all, let's take a look at this. We're starting with this figure, and let's take a look at this figure. This figure is figure 8.1, which is a personal data ecosystem. Now, if you take a look at personal data ecosystem, you find the individual whose data is being collected here. Okay, you can see the individual. I think we should use a highlighter. Okay, we should use something. You can see the individual here, right? You can see the individual here whose data is being collected. This is the individual. Now, between this first subset, inside this main set, you see the data collector. Now, some of the data collectors are your retail shop, retail markets, internet, they collect your data, telecommunication and mobile, they collect your data, your medical, your hospital, your diagnostics, they collect your data, the public, the government, and so financial insurance, they collect your data. These are your data collector. After your data collector, we have what we call the data brokers. The data brokers include the information brokers, include the hardware analytic, like your Google Analytic, all those companies or organizations that are involved in analyzing your data. List brokers, affiliates, your affiliate companies. All these are your data brokers, your credit bureau, your media archives, your health analytics, your website, catalog operations. All of these are your data brokers. And then after that, we have the data users. The data users are like the government, they use the data, the banks, they use the data, the marketers, they use the data, the media, they use the data. And then we said the products or service delivery, they use the data. Law enforcement, they use the data. Employers, they use the data. Individuals, they also use the data. Lawyers and investigators, they use the data. So figure 1.1, this is showing that personal data ecosystem and who collects the data, who brokers the data brokers, and the data users. Okay, let's move on because this section is so long. Okay, now we go to the online ecosystem for personal data. Here we've talked about the data collectors. Okay, we measured them like the retail shops, the internet, the telecommunication, mobile, the medical, hospital, and insurance company. All these are your data collectors. Okay, they collect information directly from the customers, okay, or the audience. They collect from any other type of person, any other type of users. They collect the information directly from there. Then the data brokers, they compile large amounts of personal data from the number of data collectors. They meet different data collectors and compile them and make them large data, big data, without having direct online contact with the individuals whose data were collected even in the first place. So they just go to the data collectors and compile from different data collectors and make huge data banks. They make huge data banks, okay? And then they sell this data. Then the data broker, they will repackage and sell the collected informations to various data users, typically without the permissions or inputs of the individual whose data were collected in the first place, okay? And then the data brokers also can collect information about consumers from a varieties of public and non-public sources. Okay, this is their job, this is what they do. Now we have the data users like the government, the individuals, the banks, and so on and so forth. What types of data user is the business also? The business, they use the data that wants to target its advertisement and special offer. So they get the data from the data brokers. Sometimes they buy the data from the data brokers. Okay, other uses are fraud preventions and risk management assessment. Okay, other uses that the data users use these data for, like the banks, are for fraud preventions and risk management assessments. Okay, now let's move on because this section is a long journey. Now, the online ecosystem for personal data. According to a report in 2013, the U.S. Senate made the following observations about data brokers involved in the collections and sales of consumers' data, specifically for marketing purposes. Now, it said the data brokers collect a huge volumes of data, informations on hundreds of millions of consumers, including consumers' personal characteristics and preferences, as well as health and financial informations. Now, that same data brokers, they sell this product that identify financial vulnerability of the consumers to other organizations, right? Okay, let's move this one here where it's supposed to be. Now, we also say that the data brokers products provide information about the consumers' offline behavior to tailor online outreach by the marketers. They also provide the online behavior to tailor the offline behavior by the consumers. So the data brokers also typically amass data without direct interactions with the consumers, because remember, they are not the one collecting the data directly from the consumers. They just get the data from the data collectors. Okay, they get the data and they compile huge data set and start to sell the data. Okay, now let's move on quickly. Organizations that are data brokers need to have privacy policies and technical mechanisms to ensure that the privacy of data collected directly from individuals by the data collectors are protected. Okay, they have to have privacy policy and very strong technical mechanisms to ensure that all these data that they collect from the data collectors that they have compiled or repackaged are super protected. Okay, let's move on for the sake of time. Now let's talk about web security. Web security, okay? Now the use of web presents a number of security challenges. Anytime we use website, there are a lot of security challenges. Now we have to talk about these security challenges. The web is vulnerable to attacks on web server over the internet, because anytime you use a website, every website has a host, has a server. So whenever you use it, it's vulnerable to being attacked on the internet. Now, the underlying software is extraordinarily complex. Okay. Now, this complex software may hide many potential security flaws of the website or the web server. Now, website or web server can be exploited as a launching pad into a corporation's or an agency's entire computer complex. So this can be a disguise, and a web server can be exploited by another site that is pretending to be maybe a browser to access a server, and can be exploited and as a launching pad into a corporation's, just to have an access to a corporation's database and either eavesdrop or steal sensitive information for unauthorized usage. Is that okay? Now, we also say users are not necessarily aware of the security risk that that they do not have a necessary awareness, and they do not have the necessary tool or knowledge to take effective countermeasures, because we just use a site, we just use a browser. We don't have the necessary education behind the algorithms and the modes of operation in order to take countermeasures against the flaws and all these things that are embedded into these sites. Is that okay? Okay. So just a minute. Okay, I got an urgent message. Just a minute. Okay, let's quickly deal with this, and then we continue. Is that okay? Okay, now let's continue quickly. So, like I said, as I said, we say these are some of the challenges. The use of web presents a number of security challenges. We've looked at these challenges, right? Now let's move on. Now, web security. The web security is segmented into three different parts. Okay, the web security is broken down into three different parts. The first part, or the three different classifications. It has three different classifications. Classification of security and privacy issues. Now, the first part is called the web server security and privacy. web server. Well, the first part is talking about the server itself, the web server security and privacy. I think we should change the color, right? Since the background color is something else, let's use purple. Will purple be okay? I think purple will be a bit okay. Okay, the first aspect of classification of the web security is the web server security and application. The second one is the web application security and privacy. The third one is the web browser. So there are three different stages of web classification, web security classification. The first one is the web server security and privacy. The second one is web application security and privacy. The third one is the web browser security and privacy. Okay, so now let's move on quickly. We say web server security and privacy, the first part. Here we're talking about the server. A web server is just a platform that hosts one or more websites for an organization. A web server is just a platform that hosts one or more websites for an organization, right? If that is so, then the organization uses one or more dedicated server for this purpose. The organization usually use, I think I don't like this color. It doesn't come out good with this. Can we try something else? Let's try blue. The light blue. No, this one is the, okay. Okay. So sometimes they use a dedicated server. They use a dedicated server for this specific purpose. Now, the resource demand for the website do not require dedicated servers. Okay, they just used a server, but usually not a dedicated server. And the system design may employ a virtual machine sometimes, or contains architecture that partitions off part of the server's resources for the website. Is that okay? Now let's move quickly. Now we look at the OS issues, the operating system issues that come with web server. Okay. First of all, adversary. Adversary are those people that want to gain access to your network. They are unauthorized people that want to gain access to your network. Sometimes adversary, they always want to be able to obtain privileged access to the server operating system. They always try to gain access to the server's operating system, right? And this adversary, they may be able to compromise your confidentiality if they are able to gain access to the web server, and they will compromise your confidentiality and availability of the system. Sometimes they can cause denial of service to your entire network. They might eavesdrop if they're able to access your server. They might compromise your integrity, okay, and change the things that you have, so that at the end of the day you'll be in trouble. Then they compromise your confidentiality, the things that you don't want people to see, that are very private about your business, your secret, or the secret of your business. So they might compromise all of these things. So we don't want adversary to gain access to our web server operating system. We don't want this. Okay, these are one of the concerns as a system IT administrator. You have to be aware how to prevent the adversary from gaining access to the system's confidentiality, its integrity, and availability of the system itself. Adversary also may sometimes be able to access personally identifiable information, files, or the entire database, or to observe the ingoing and outgoing traffic containing your personally identifiable information. So this is one thing they do. They want to eavesdrop or observe the traffic, the ingoing and outgoing traffic of all the personally identifiable information. You know, when they have access to all the ingoing and outgoing personally identifiable information, then you are in trouble, because there is no secret in your business. All the sensitive personally identifiable information that you have in your database can be compromised. Okay, can be compromised, and can bring about other negative effects or adverse effects on the client or the users who provided this information in the first instance. Then let's talk about that. Also, the threat may be in the form of malware. They may introduce malware. Malware, remember, all the viruses. Virus is a type of malware. There are so many different types of malware. We talked about, I think, chapter 4, chapter 5, talked about it. Or intrusion. They might intrude into your privacy, to your system, and do whatever they want. So you have to find a way to prevent adversaries from gaining system to your server, your web server operating system. Then also, primary means of defending the web server from unwanted access include authorization. There must be an authorization system created, so unauthorized users cannot access your server. And then also use authentication and the access control mechanism. All of this we have to prevent those unauthorized users or adversary from gaining access to your system. Now let's move on quickly. File database concern. Now the first one we looked at was the operating system concern. Now we're looking at the files and the database concern. Beyond the system access control, there may be other countermeasures and defenses associated with files and database containing data that need to be protected in your system. Now, that needs to be protected in your system. One of these is, okay, I think the volume will be affected. One of these is encryption. So once you provide encryption, then you're able to protect your files and at the same time protect your database. You're able to protect your files and also to protect database from unauthorized access. Or in this case, you are controlling the access. Okay? So any additional access control associated with stored data, such as with a database management system, are another form. Okay, so you need encryption in order to protect your data and your database and your file. Is that okay? Now let's move on quickly. Now network concerns. In the network concerns, we're looking at how we can provide or a protection that is applied to any server or other system in the organization's network. You have to provide, now we need to change this color, right? We need to change this color. Maybe probably to yellow. You can choose yellow. Okay. We need to be able to provide a protections to the server or the systems in the organization's network, right? That's number one. Number two is that an organization may choose to position a web server in a DMZ to allow a greater level of access from external users that is allowed for the IT resources or IT infrastructure. Okay. Then virtually all websites also employ a secure transfer data transfer protocol. We're going to talk about HTTPs. Okay. The virtual website, they employ what we call the secure data transfer protocol to provide the security that is needed when you transmit data. Okay. Now we say that in a network. Now this secure protocol is based on what we call the hypertext transfer protocol, the HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol. But there's a secure one, a better version of HTTP called HTTPS. HTTPS now, okay. Now HTTP is a protocol for transferring hypertext rather than it's a protocol for transmitting. HTTP is not for transferring hypertext. We don't use it for transferring hypertext. We use it for transmitting information with the efficiency necessary to making hypertext to jump. We transmit data or information with such efficiency that eventually enables the hypertext to jump to the next level. Now, the data transfer by the protocol can be plain text or can be hypertext, can be audio, can be images, can be videos, can be other internet accessible informations, right? Okay. Now, let's move on to the next secured one, which is called HTTPS. Now, HTTPS, this is called Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. See? Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, HTTPS, is the secure version of HTTP. This one, this is the latest one, and is the secure version of the HTTP. Okay? Now, the HTTPS encrypts all communication between the browser and the website. And web browsers such as web browser for like Apple products, they use Safari browse as their web browser. Then for Mozilla's, they have Firefox. Then Google, they have what we call the Google Chrome. They use Chrome as their browser interface. Okay, so these are three very popular. We also have Internet Explorer. Now it's changed. It's Edge. It's called Edge by Microsoft. That's another browser. Okay, these are called web browsers. the Safari, the Firefox, the Chromes. These web browsers such as Safari, the Firefox, the Chromes displayed a padlock if they have what? If they have what we call the HTTPS. If they have the HTTPS, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol secure. If they have it, they have a sign like a padlock icon. They have an icon like a padlock in their address bar to virtually indicate that the HTTP connection is in effect, okay, to show that, oh, this is a secure network, this is a secure website, okay. Now, because it provides a secure protocol for transmitting informations, with the hope that the hypertext will also have a jump. Now, data sent using HTTP provide three important areas of protection. They provide encryptions. They provide encryption, which is a superb protection of data. They provide data integrity, which is another super protection of data or information. They provide authentication, which is a super level layer protection of data or information. Now, let's move to the next phase. Now, the next phase, we're looking at web application Firefox. Okay, we're looking at web application Firefox. Okay, Firefox is also used for providing super protection and super security in the web application, in web applications space. Now, the most important tools in countering web application threat is a web application firewalls. Okay, we use a firewalls to protect any threat from web application. Okay, a web application firewalls, which we simply call WAF, is a firewalls that monitors, not only they monitor everything in the website, they have to filter what is on the website, and then they also block the data packets as they travel to or from a web application. They block it if it's found wanting, if they suspect anything. So they monitor, they filter, they block data packets as they travel to or from the web application. Okay, they run it or as a network appliance, server plugins, and cloud service. A web application firewall inspects each packet as it moves. It inspects each packet and uses a rule base to analyze web application logic and filter out potentially harmful traffic. So it will filter potentially harmful traffic. You know, some traffic are just unnecessarily harmful. They are from your, they are malicious. They are from your adversaries. They are there to cause eavesdrop or spy or stealing of your data, or even aligning your data, and or even causing changing your data configuration. Okay, a WAF is placed logically between the application and the user so that it will be able to filter unwanted traffickers. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Is a web where internet. These are remote users. This is an external firewall. Okay, and then here is also another. This is called internal firewalls. Okay, for enterprise protection, to protect what we call this enterprise network. This was to provide protection for this enterprise network. And then we have another one called web application firewalls. This is the web application firewalls itself, because this is protecting this server. This is a server, the web server, and these firewalls, web application firewalls, is protecting this server from, it blocks unauthorized usage. This is a router that routes everything to everywhere in the world to this different network, and this server. Is that okay? Now let's move on quickly. Now, web application firewalls. There are a number of hosting options for WAFs, including the following. One is a network-based hosting, local hardware-based hosting, and local software. The network-based hosting refers to this one, the one that is used to protect this enterprise. Okay, to protect this enterprise. Then the local hardware firewalls or based hosting is placed between the application server and its network. Application server, this one, this second one. Okay, let me say this one, number 2. This is number 1. Okay, this one is the hardware, is the local hardware. Okay, local hardware hosted. This firewall is placed to protect the web server and the network itself. Okay, you can see the network through the use of router. Okay, then the third one is the local software. A software where firewalls is built on the server host operating system, or is a virtual machine operating system. This is the software. Okay, it's a firewall that is built on the operating system or virtually machine operating system. Okay, now let's move on. We have what we call the mod security. Mod security is an example of a web application firewalls. It's an example of a web application firewalls. Now let's take a look at the key features of mod security. One is the real-time application security monitoring and the access control. Real-time application, so it's able in real-time basis able to monitor the application's system, okay, and also provide what we call the access control. Another features of the MOB security is the virtual patching. And then another feature is full HTTP traffic log. Full HTTP traffic log is able to provide filter the traffic and see everyone that comes in and go out, able to see that. Okay, the web application hardening, okay, is able to handle and make it tough for users on this site. Okay, now still on the MOB security can be deployed as a embedded software package on the same server as the web application itself. Okay, it also can be deployed as a separate server. You can use it as a separate server, or you can build it. You know, it's a software. You can build it on the server with the same application, web application, or you can deploy it on a separate server. You create a separate server for this MOB security itself, okay, to provide that super protection to your web servers. Is that okay? Now let's still look at the web browser security and privacy. This is the second one for web security. In web security, the first one was in web security, the first one was web server security and privacy. Now the second one is the web application. We talked about the web application. The third one is the web browser security. Okay, web browser security. All these firewalls are still on the application. Okay, now third one is the web browser security and privacy. Now on the browser, here we have to look at the vulnerability that are in the web browsers. Okay, and it has become a popular way for attackers to compromise computer system. They exploit the vulnerability in your web browser. So here we're going to look at the common threats. The following are the common threats that needs action, right? One is the connections to online resource. The connections to online resource. When you are using a particular web browser, you want to connect to any online resource. So here there can be a threat. Then the plugins that are installed to the web browsers, the plugins that are installed to the web browser could provide a vulnerable attack or a vulnerability for the attackers. The vulnerability in the browser itself. The browser itself may be vulnerable for attackers to easily exploit and hit on the users. Now let's take a look still on the web browser security and privacy. Organizations therefore should ensure that the employees have updated their browsers to the latest version, because sometimes we're using a browser and we're using the old versions, and this is one way the attackers or the adversary can easily hit on the corporations, because when the employees are still using the old browsers, then old browsers are full of vulnerability. And in fact, that was the reasons why the developers have enhanced, or the owners have enhanced the browser to its latest versions. So they spotted the vulnerability, so they've modified it and they've brought the new versions. So the employees should update their browsers in order to prevent adversary from gaining access through these browsers to the organization's data and files. Web browsers should have basic use access with no administrators privileges. Okay, no administrators privileges should be given. Now, the organization should require use of browsers with strong security features. So these browsers that should be authorized by any organization should include these following strong security features like anti-phishing, okay, anti-malware, and plugin security and sandbox. Should have the following, meaning the adversary should not easily gain access to your network. So you should provide anti-phishing. Phishing is when the adversary can easily gain access to your system. So anti-phishing should be able to, the browser that you're using should have anti-phishing, strong at malware, and plugin securities and the sandbox in order to prevent and protect you from the adversary from gaining access to the organization's files and informations. Users should also be trained, okay, to set the security and privacy settings of the browsers to the highest level possible and allow only certain actions such as the use of JavaScripts, okay, because this provides encryptions and provides authentication and so on and so forth on the trusted site. Is that okay? So you must give your users required trainings and education in order to use the highest level of standards for the browsers in your organizations. Now, let's go to mobile app securities. Okay, mobile app security. Mobile device is any portable technology running on operating systems optimized or designed for mobile computing. Something designed for mobile computing, portable one designed for that at that matter. Now, the definition also excludes technology running traditional or classic or more general purpose operating system. Okay. Now we say securities for mobile devices is a pressing and complex issues because of their widespread use and unique characteristics. So the security is in question here. The security is in question of mobile devices because we use them anyhow, everywhere, anywhere, on different sites, and it's in fact security is a big question on mobile usage. Now, users access remote services via apps on their mobile devices that links to remote servers. So, in this regard, you have to focus in the case. In this case, is on the security of the app. You must look at the security of the app before you allow remote access. Is that okay? Now let's take a look at, here is your mobile device, okay? This is your mobile device, and here you have your communication network, your telecommunication, your cellular infrastructure, your telecommunication, providing your Wi-Fi networks. Okay, so with your Wi-Fi, your mobile phone will gain access to the internet, right? Once this is set up, you have your, in Malaysia here we use TM, telecommunication. You use TM, you also use time, okay, to provide the Wi-Fi. And there's so many anyway, but these are two very popular ones. Okay, so you have what we call the Wi-Fi networks, and once you have Unify, which is a subsidiary of TM, Telecom Malaysia, they provide this to you in your homes. Then your mobile devices can gain access to the internet. Once you have access to the internet, you have the public app store like your Play Store and your Play Store, for example, or art gallery and so on and so forth, depending on which configuration, which device we are looking at. And then here you have what we call the device OS vendors infrastructure, like the security updates, your backup storage, your push notification services, okay, on the net. Then here you have your VPN, the virtual private networks, and you have the EMM. Now your VPN will enable you to access emails and file sharing and apps and so on and so forth. Then your EMM will enable you to access enterprise app stores, other enterprise app stores. Okay, so this is the mobile configuration and the mobile ecosystem, the whole mobile ecosystem. Now let's move on quickly. Now, mobile device vulnerability. There are a lot of vulnerability coming from mobile usage. Now, the lack of physical security control. You know, mobile device lack this physical security control. So this creates a vulnerability for adversaries to attack your devices. There also another vulnerability is the use of untrusted mobile devices. Okay, you just use untrusted mobile devices, and then this can in your network. So as an organization, sometimes it's not good to allow your employees to bring their mobile devices. Some organizations, they provide secure mobile devices for all employees to use it while they are in their working area, in their workplace. So this is to prevent the use of untrusted mobile devices in your network, because the attackers or the adversaries can, through these mobile devices, access your organization's database and files, and this will create a huge information loss or breach of informations to your organization, which will cost you billions of dollars. Then another one is the use of untrusted networks also, or trusted networks in your working area. So some mobile phones easily they access networks that may not be trusted, and this will create opportunity or vulnerability for hackers or adversaries to access this organization whilst they are using their phone, using your internet or your networks to access untrusted networks. So this can bring a lot of damage to an organization. Is that okay? Then another thing where vulnerability comes from mobile usage is the use of application created by unknown parties. So you see workers or your employees using their mobile devices to access applications created by unknown parties, and this can create a chance, a vulnerability, whereby an adversary can have from there access your organization's network and have access and eavesdrop on your data, steal your data, and do all sorts of things that they intend to do. Another area of mobile vulnerability is the interactions with other systems. So because the mobile devices also interact with other systems like pad, like computers and other things, here can create a vulnerability in the integration between the usage of the mobile operating system and the other devices. Okay, then the use of untrusted content. Your employees using untrusted content while in your work area, in your organization's work area, can have access to your organization, or even outside the organization's area can have access to your organization, or bring this untrusted content, this adversary, to be able to have access to your organization. Use of location devices like GPS. Okay, your employees, while they are working, some of them they own their GPS. So this will create a vulnerability, a scenario whereby the hackers are able to open and have access to your organization's data and files, which is very not suitable for you and can cost you a lot. Now, when we describe or discussed about the use of untrusted mobile devices, we said that some organization, they buy for you mobile devices that you use in their work area. Okay, while some they tell you to bring your own device. BYOD, bring your own device. Okay, now we're going to describe this one, bring your own device policies. Now, the bring your own device policies, a number of organizations supply mobile devices for employees' use, and they pre-configure those devices to conform to the enterprise security policies. This is the best one. If your organization can afford it, I think if cost is not an issue, I think this is the best thing to do, rather than every staff or employee brings their mobile device to your work area. So you buy them and you pre-configure these mobile devices that you bought for them as a gift. Okay, that's what they should bring to your work area, and every other mobile device of theirs should stay in their home. Okay, should stay in their home. They shouldn't bring it to your office or work area. Okay, as a gift for them. You pre-configure it so that adversary cannot through their mobile devices, adversary cannot access your network, cannot access your work area or your network and steal your sensitive, personally sensitive, personally identifiable information from you, or financial information from you, and so on and so forth. There, we say many organizations finds it very convenient to just tell their staff to bring your own devices. Bring your own devices. Okay, they adopt this time. Bring your own devices. Probably this is to reduce cost. Okay, probably, but it has its own consequences. Okay, like we have already described, that the consequences could be that their mobile phones will be easily accessed by adversaries to access your organization, which might cost you a lot. Now, another thing we look in the policy is that the IT manager should be able to inspect every device before allowing them access to the network in the organization work area. Okay, even if you tell them to bring your own devices, they are bringing their own devices, the IT manager should be able to inspect these devices before allowing them the access to the work area or the network access. Okay. Then we say the IT should also establish configuration guidelines for operating systems and the application. Configuration guidelines, okay, for operating system and network, so that this will help to prevent unauthorized users from getting access to the organization's network. Now we say also the bring your own device policy generally also prohibits side loading. Let's talk about side loading. What is side loading? Let's go to the next. Side loading is the act of downloading an app to a device via a link or via a website without passing or going through the official app stores. You download anything without maybe like Play Store is the official app store. Play Store and the other one for Apple products. Okay, these are the official app stores. So side loading simply means you are downloading something from a link that is sent to you. You just download something from a link that is sent to you or from a website without going through without downloading that thing from the official app store. This is side loading. Is that okay? Now we say, while enterprises often use side loading as a method for distributing homegrown apps, when your enterprise develop their homegrown apps, they have to use side loading. Okay, because these homegrown apps may not be in the official apps, so they have to use side loading. Okay, they use it, but however, the danger in it is that malicious actors may use side loading to distribute their malware. Okay, the enterprise may have good intentions to use side loading to distribute their own or homegrown apps to their employees. However, malicious actors, those who develop malicious software, they may use side loading also to distribute their malicious software to have access to unauthorized usage or information. Now let's go to what we call routing. Routing is the process of removing restricted mode of operation. Process of removing any restricted mode of operation. Now, for example, routing may enable content with digital rights to be used on any computer. Okay? Any content with digital right to be used on any computer, or it may allow enhanced third-party operating system or applications to be used on a mobile device. So because you have what? Removed the restriction mode of operation. Okay? Now, while routing is the term that is used for Android devices, jailbreaking is the one that we use for Apple devices. We use the term routing for Android. We use jailbreaking for Apple devices. Is that okay? Now let's move up quickly. Now here is the app vetting process. If you want to have access, or you want to download app from an app store, then first of all there's a systematic request that is sent by the administrator, which analyzes. Okay, there's an analyzer service and root tools, all of these things, and then this will be checked by a report and risk assessment that is carried out, and then once that is done, there's an audit section that creates recommendations. Then there's an approver who approves or rejects if this is against the practice. So it approves. Once it's approved, then you are able to access and download this app on your system. Is that okay? Now let's move on quickly. Resource for mobile device security. Now here are some publications that have been done on mobile device security. Okay, one study on mobile device security, DHS. So this page take a holistic look at some publications that have been done on mobile device security. Is that okay? Now let's look at the web application privacy. Okay, we say the Open Web Applications Security Project, which is OWASP Top 10 Privacy Risk Project, provides a list of the top privacy risk in web application. The risks are: web application vulnerability is a risk, user side data leakage is a risk, insufficient data breach response is a risk. Then we say insufficient deletion of personal data is a risk. Non-transparent policy terms and conditions is a risk. Collection of data not required for the primary purpose is a risk. Okay, you collect data, you're not using it for the purpose for which it was collected, is a risk. Sharing of data with third party is a risk. Outdated personal data is a risk. Missing or insufficient section expiration is a risk. Insecure data transfer is also a risk. Okay, so now let's look at how risky they are. Let's look at them from this table 8.2, web application privacy risk. Now when you say web application vulnerability, the frequency is a risk. We talk about the frequency, we also talk about the impact. Okay, the frequency, it has high frequency, and then we have the impact is very high. The impact is very high. Or operator side data leakage, the frequency is high and the impact is very high. Then the insufficient data breach response, the frequency is high and the impact is very high. Okay, and so on and so forth. So just if you go to insufficient deletion of personal data, the frequency is very high, the impact is high. If you go to non-transparent policy terms and conditions, the frequency is very high, the impact is high. If you go to sharing of data with third party, the frequency is very high, the impact is high, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is about the web application privacy risk. Now let's move on to the next phase. Now let's talk about mobile app privacy. Privacy threats related to mobile apps fall in two categories. One is the threat that exploit vulnerability in apps that are not themselves malicious, and then the second one is the threat related to installation of malicious app. Okay, these are two threats that are found in mobile app privacy. Now let's threats against vulnerable application. One is insecure network communication. Okay, network traffic needs to be securely encrypted. If you don't encrypt the network traffic, then you are exposing it to adversary to gain access to and eavesdrop on the traffic on the network, or both in the ingoing traffic and the outgoing traffic. They will eavesdrop and then something can happen. Then the second vulnerable application threat against vulnerable application is the web browser vulnerability. Here we say the adversary can exploit the vulnerability in mobile device web browsers and their applications as an entry point to gain access to the mobile device. Okay, then we talk another threat against vulnerable application is the vulnerability in the third-party library. Now here the third-party software library are reusable components that may be distributed freely or offered for a fee to other software vendors. Now another vulnerable aspect is the cryptographic vulnerability. Cryptographic vulnerability can occur due to failure to use the cryptographic protection for any sensitive personally identifiable information. Now still on that, threat from potentially harmful application. Now potentially harmful application information. One is app that gathers privacy sensitive information. You can get a thread from here. Another one is because this one they gather what we call the malicious app that collect informations or such as the device persistent identifier, device locations, list of installed applications. So it will gather all this very privacy sensitive information about the app itself or about the mobile device itself. Then another threat from potentially harmful application is surreptitious eavesdropping. It's another one. Now, these apps assess device sensors and then they eavesdrop or they photograph the users and every other thing that is in it. Now, another threat from potentially harmful application is the exploitive vulnerability. Apps may be designed to take advantage of vulnerability in other apps, the operating system or other devices components. Okay, exploiting vulnerability. App may be designed to take advantage of vulnerability in other apps. They were just designed to take the vulnerability opportunity in other apps. They're not designed actually for the purpose that they disclose. They are designed to steal or watch or create intrusion in other apps and steal the data or eavesdrop on other apps. Okay, another vulnerability coming from threat from potentially harmful application is the manipulation of trusted apps. Okay, these apps masquerade as beanies and often they're very popular applications. They are downloaded unwittingly by a user, such an app then perform any other malicious work that it was actually intended by those who developed it. Okay, it's they are like masquerades. Okay, then another threat coming from here is the sharing of data between trusted apps. Apps may share data with external resources such as Dropbox without the user's awareness, without you knowing that your app is sharing data with another app. Okay, online privacy principle. Now we have with the Federal Trade Commission. This is an economic bureau in United States. Okay, this Federal Trade Commission, they define sets of fair information practice principle, FIPS, fair information practice principle, FIPS. Okay, appropriate for identify online privacy requirements. These principles are: one is the notice / awareness. So before anyone can use your data, personally identifiable information, they have to give you a notice. Ensure that the consumers are notified or made aware of the organization's information practices before the information is usually collected. So before any organization can do anything or collect anything from information from your user information, they have to give you a notice or create an awareness, make you aware of what they want to do with the information, even in the first place, before they collect the information. Then another principle that was set by this Federal Trade Commission to watch over a set of fair information practice principle is their choice and consent. So whatever they want to do with your information, they must consult you. It must be your choice. Customers should be given a choice to decide whether or not they allow. Okay. Then the third one is access and participation. You should be allowed to participate on a contest. Then integrity and security, ensuring that the data that they collected from you are accurate and they are secured. Okay. Then another thing is enforcement and redress, ensuring that the mechanisms are in place to enforce privacy. Without enforcing the mechanisms in place to enforce privacy, then they are not allowed to collect this data. Okay, now let's move on. Then still on online privacy principle. Then individual control. The consumers that they control, they should have right to exercise control over the personal data that they've collected from them. Transparency. The consumer have a right to easily understand and access information about privacy and security practices that this organization portray. Then the respect for content. Then consumers have right to expect the companies to collect and use and disclose the personal data in a way that that is consistent with the context in which the consumers provide the data. They must have a respect for the use that you have provided the data. They cannot begin to use the information for other usage without respecting the purpose for which you have provided this data. Security. Consumers have right to secure and responsible handling of their personally identifiable information, right? Then access and accuracy. Consumers have right to access and correct their personal data, because you might update the data today. Like, for example, your passport number might change. Okay, you might obtain another passport, so you might be able to update your data. Then focus collection. The consumers have right to a reasonable limit on the personal data that the companies collect and they retain from them. The accountability. Consumers have a right to have a personal data handled by companies with appropriate measures in place to ensure that and to adhere to the consumer's privacy bill of right that they've signed. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Here is the FTC, Federal Trade Commission Outline Privacy Framework. Here we have the privacy by design. We look at the data security. Under the principle, we look at the reasonable collection limits, what you should collect, what you shouldn't collect. How does it relate to the purpose why you collected this data? Then we looked at the sound retention practices, and then we look at data accuracy, how accurate these data are and how accurate for their usage. Then we look at the procedural protection, the comprehensive data management process. So what procedure, method, policies you have in place to protect the data of these consumers. Now, after that, we looked at simplified data choice. Practice that do not require choice, and we have practice that do require choices. So this should be made available and made known to the consumers. Transparency of data practices. Privacy notices should be given. Consumer access to data should be allowed, and consumer education should be provided. Okay, so let's move on quickly. Privacy by design. A privacy by design details the privacy requirement that is to be considered at the time of designing a new system or a subsystem or a networks or any application or sub-applications or other components of the IT infrastructure of any organizations. Okay. Now, the intent or the reasons for this is to design a privacy engineering mechanisms and techniques that can be incorporated in a holistic fashion during the implementations and the deployment of the system. So you must have a privacy engineering system that takes a look at the mechanisms, the techniques, and that you are using with a holistic fashion during the implementations and development of the system itself. Now, privacy by design elements of the online privacy framework defines two components. One is that companies should incorporate substantive privacy protection into the actions referred to as privacy by design principle. Second, the company should maintain. Second reason is that the company should maintain a comprehensive data management procedures throughout the life cycles of their product and services. Okay. Now let's still on data by design, privacy by design. We look at the relevant principles of this privacy by design is data security. Okay. All of this. For designing privacy, it's to ensure that data that you collect, the sensitive and non-sensitive personally identifiable data information that you collected are secure in your network or your system or your database. So we say effective security for PII, personally identifiable information, involves both the management process and technical controls. Okay. Now, number two that we're looking at when we are looking at the relevant privacy by design principle is to look at reasonable collection limit, the level upon which the company can collect, and how consistent you are with the context, okay, of the transaction, of the relationship you have with the business and with the consumers that you collected this data from, and the laws or the authorizations you have, the limit and the level that you have to collect this data. Now we look at another number three for this principle of privacy by design is to look at sound retention practices. Companies should implement reasonable restrictions on the retentions of data and also should dispose of the data when they have outlived the legitimate purpose for which those data were collected in the first place. So you cannot just keep the data for later use. If they have outlived the reasons for which you have collected the data, you should dispose them. Data accuracy, number 4, under the principles of privacy by design. Then the company should take reasonable steps to ensure that the accuracies of the data that they've collect and they collect and they maintain, particularly if such data could cause significant harm, and then they should ensure that this data used to deny consumer services. Okay, now let's move on. Now, this table you see, table 8.2, 8.3, 8.3, they just Google end user privacy settings and tools. Here you can see other privacy. Google have a 2-step verification, then they have device activities and notification, they have service encryption, they inform you if you're the one that logged you through another device or so, Chrome safe browser and so on and so forth. So Google does all of these things to create privacy and protections for their user. Okay, now let's go to simplify consumer choice. Still on the Federal Trade Commission, we say Bureau of Economics consider the handling of personal data to fall in 2 categories. The first one is practices that do not require choice. The second one is the practice that require choice. For the practice that do not require choice, then the companies do not need to provide choice before collecting and using the consumer's data for practices that are consistent with the context of the transactions or company's relationship with the consumer. Okay, then the second one is practices that require choice. For practices that require choice, the companies that should offer the choice at a time in the context in which the consumers is deciding about his or her data that is provided to the company. The company should also maintain affirmative express consent before one uses the consumer's data in a materially different manner that are claimed when the data was collected in the first place, or collecting sensitive data for certain purposes. So if you are going to use the data for any other purpose, you should get a consent form from the owners of those data that you collected in the first place. Is that okay? Now, transparency of data practices. Now here we are looking at three scenarios. The FTC lists 3 principles that should guide companies in providing consumers with customers and other users with privacy information. One is privacy notices. Okay, privacy notices should be clear, short, and standardized to enable better comprehensions and comparison of privacy practices, so that everyone will understand. No ambiguity. Don't write things to confuse people. Don't write privacy notices that will take 5 pages, people cannot read. And okay, so it should be short, clear, precise, standardized. Okay, so that people already standardized means if I use it here, I can. If I already read it, I should understand it anywhere and everywhere. Now we look at the access. Also, number 2 principle is access. The company should provide reasonable access to the consumer's data that they maintain. The consumer should have access to the data that the company is maintaining. Then the 3rd principle, as a standard set by the Federal Trade Commission, is the consumer's education. All stakeholders should expand their effort to educate consumers about their commercial data privacy practices, so that they know, they understand, okay, what you're doing with the data that you collected from them. Now let's move on. Privacy notices. Here we are looking. What here simply means is that you should create that awareness and notices to consumers that you call. Companies should create that awareness and notices to consumers upon which they connect their data. Okay, including what personal information is collected, used, and retained and shared. Now, the principal vehicle by which companies provide the information is the privacy notice. They have to provide the privacy notice in order for them to be able to handle or use this data. Now, let's take a look at this. The mobile apps, these types of privacy information is generally less available in the case of mobile app. That's why mobile app is more vulnerable than the laptop, computers, and all that type of computer devices. Okay, now let's move on quickly. Notice requirement, and these are some ISO 29184 online privacy notices and consent. provides a list of the requirements that the organization should satisfy in developing a notice and policies and that they give. One of it is the requirement is multilingual notice, okay, that this will be given in different languages. Appropriate timing, you should give enough time and make sure the timing is good enough for the consumers. Appropriate locations, it should be easy for the personally identifiable principals to find and access privacy notices. Appropriate form, the notice structure should be clear and appropriate for the context. Then another thing, another requirement is the obligation to provide notice. The organization must determine what circumstances require that notice to be provided to the personally identifiable principal. The ongoing reference, organizations should retain versions of notices for long as they are associated with and retained with the personally identifiable information. Accessibility, organizations should accommodate personally identifiable principals who have access issues. Okay, you should be able to accommodate them, accommodate principals that have access issues that could no longer access the data. Then appropriate expression. Okay, the notice should be clear and easy to understand by those who these notices are intended for. Okay, let's move on quickly. Now for Google, you can see privacy notice topic. See Google. For Google, an example of notice. Okay. Then JP Morgan, Chase Bank, and then IAPP. These are big organizations in America. Google, everyone knows Google. This is a bank, and this is also an organization that provide information. Okay. Now let's move on quickly. The ISO 29184 privacy topics look at collection, okay, data collection, PII controllers, looks at specific PII elements, looks at collection method, the method you use in collecting your data from the personally identifiable principals should be understood, and then looks at timing and locations, okay, this looks at the timing that these data were collected and the timing and location. Then they look at the method of use, how you're using the data you've collected. Okay. Then also the top privacy topics that they normally describe or discuss under the ISO 29184 is the geolocation jurisdiction. Okay. The organization should indicate where the PII should be stored and processed. Okay. Then third-party transfer. Organization should provide detailed information about any transfer of PII to a third party. You must let us know. Then retention period, how long you go to hold this personally identifiable before you dispose them. Then participation of PII principal. Okay. Organization should indicate what rights the PII principal has with respect to the collected PII data they've taken from them. The inquiry and complaint. Organization should inform the PII, okay, principal about how to exercise his or her rights, or also how he or she can file a complaint. Okay. Then these topics also cover. This ISO also cover topics such as assessing the choices for consent. Okay. And then the organization should provide the means for a PII principal to review what permission he or she has granted. You should be able to review them. Okay, it shouldn't be like permanent after you've given permission. Later, once in a while, you should be able to review what you have granted. Maybe some you allowed before you don't no longer want to allow. There also basis for processes. Organization should provide information about the basis for which the PII information will be processed. The risk. Organization should provide specific information about possible risk to the personally identifiable information. Okay, here are National Telecommunication and Information Administration's short form privacy notices. Okay, here you see National Telecommunication and Information administration short form. Now this is an organization, right? Now they collect data such as your biometrics, and biometrics includes information about your body, about your fingerprints, about your facial recognition, your signature, and your voice print. Then they collect information about your browser history. They collect information about your phone and text log. They collect information about your contact in your phone. They collect information about your financial information, like your credits, your banks, your consumer-specific financial information. They collect information about your health, medical, and therapy information. Collect information about your location, about user files, and so on and so forth. See? Now, we say they also have your ad networks, your carriers, companies that provide your mobile connection. They collect information about your data resellers, about your data analytic providers, government entities, operating system and platform, other apps that you have in your system, social networks. So they virtually collect so many secrets from you. Okay, so many secrets from you. So that's why the PII needs to be protected. PII principle needs to be protected. Now let's take a look at the figure 8.6, which is privacy notice design space. Here we have the timing. Okay, we have the timing. The mouse is not functioning appropriately. We have the timing at setup, just in time, context dependent, periodic time, persistent, on demand. These are all timing that organizations should state while after they've collected your how they use based on time, how they use your PII data based on time. The organization should also provide the channel. We have the primary channel, what type of channel they will be using, primary channel, secondary, or public. Then, so that you know whether your data will be in public domain or secondary usage or primary usage. Then the modality they're going to use. All these are privacy notice that you have to let the PII principal know. Another modality notice is the visual, your auditory, haptic, machine readable. These are the modality you're going to use. Control, you're going to block, unauthorized usage, or non-blocking, or decoupled. So these are the privacy notice design space. Now here, tracking. Tracking is the capability of a web server or other online system to create a record of website visited by a user over time. Okay, ability to create. I think we should change this color, right? This color is not so visible. Which color will best suit? Let's try this one. It's not so good, but I think it's better than this one. So tracking is the capability of a web browser, a web server, or other online system to create a record of website that visited them. Okay, a website visited by a user, or website that a particular user has visited over a period of time. Okay, can also involve the ability to include the history of the web pages visited, the history of the web page that you visited. Okay, then we also say the data collection techniques raises substantial privacy concern. Of course, the method we use collecting data raises issue about privacy. Now let's take a look at other things that are used for tracking. One is cookies. A cookie is a short block of text that is set from a web server to a web browser when the web browser accesses the server's web page. Okay, a short block of words or text that is sent by the server to browser anytime the browser access the server. Okay, now a cookie is stored in the user space for the web browser's user to have access to it. Now the information stored in cookie include in cookie you find information such as the minimum, the name of the cookie, the unique identification number, and its domain, the URL. Okay, Now, when a browser requests a page from a server, that is set. When a browser, anytime a web browser like Safari, like Chrome, like Firefox, whenever they request a page from a server, okay, a web server, that sends it a cookie. So the server will send the browser a cookie. Now the browser sends a copy of the cookie back to the server. First is the server that sends the browser a cookie. Then the browser will now send a copy of it back to the server. It's like to establish a connection, a trusted connection. Okay? Now the method of cookie retrieval is as follows. 1. A user types URL of a website or click a link to a website. The browser sends HTML message requesting a connection to the server. Okay? If there is any cookies then from that website, then the browser sends those cookies along with the URL. This web server receives the cookies and can use any of the information stored in the cookies. Okay? Now, cookies are a convenience for both the users and the web service. It's very convenient because it establishes a trusted arrangement between the web service and the users. Okay, here are some examples of cookie. We have saved cookies, and then we have aggregate visitors information. We have user preferences. We have shopping cart, the one you find in online shopping like Lazada, Shopee, in Malaysia here, in US like eBay, Amazon, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then we have the save on, the one that is already established between the user and the browser and the server. Okay. Then we have the aggregate visitors cookie. Okay, like the one that already established a visitor, that a visitor has arrived, this type of cookie, and then the server already knows this and then replies to the browser, and so on and so forth. We have user preferences. Okay, so then the characteristics of cookie, we have like one, they identified. We have unidentified cookie, they do not contain ID, and then we have identified cookie which contain ID during the long on to website page. Okay, we have duration, sexual cookie, deleted when the web session terminates. When you finish, it will be deleted. We have persistent cookie, they will not be deleted. They will deleted when the time specified in the cookie expire, only when the time has expired. Okay, we have party. First party contains URL with the website the user is visiting. Then the third party contains URL of a third party. Okay, now let's move on. We have what we call other tracking technology apart from cookie. We have the flash cookie. The flash cookie is superior to the ordinary cookie, the HTTP cookies. In that, now the superiority is that the flash cookie, even if you erase the HTTP cookies or the other cookie that you know, you clear the history, you erase the cache, or you choose a delete private data options within the browser, then this flash cookie still does not get deleted. It still remains. So this is the superiority it has, okay, over the other HTTP cookies that we've talked about. Now let's talk about the device fingerprinting as also another tracking device. Can track devices over time based on the browser's configuration and settings. Fingerprints made up of information that can be gathered passively from the web browsers. Then, because each browser is unique, each fingerprint can identify your device without using the cookies, right? Then, because the device fingerprinting uses the characteristics of your user configuration to track you, deleting cookies would not help you because you are using a fingerprinting. A countermeasure to fingerprinting is to make your device fingerprint anonymous. Okay, in this case you'll be saved. Now, do not track. Sometimes we have do not track scenarios, right? Now, all browsers allow the users to select a do not track options. Okay, these features enable users to tell every website, their advertisers, and the content providers that do not want their browsing behavior tracked. Okay, they provide this do not track capability, do not track, showing that you don't want anyone, either the cookie or anything, or fingerprinting technologies or every other technology to track your devices, because we've talked about tracking devices just now. Honoring this setting is voluntary. Individual websites do not require to respect it. Sometimes they do not respect it because you just do not track. So people may not listen to you. They can still go ahead to track you. Websites do not honor these settings should automatically stop tracking the user's behavior without any further actions from the user. So if you do not authorize anyone to track, they should track you, actually track your listing. Many websites simply ignore the do not track feed, which is very horrible. It's not good. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this section. Okay, we've summary, we've discussed the key consideration related to the web security. We've discussed the mobile app security. We've discussed we understood the nature of privacy threats related to web access and the use of mobile apps. We talked about an overview of the Federal Trade Commission online privacy framework. We looked at the privacy notices for both the web and mobile environments. And then we understood the privacy threat and the tracking privacy threat posed by tracking devices or tracking methods. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this session. Thank you for listening. Thank you.